Hello and welcome to Curmudgeon 181. Right now we're having massive thunderstorms around here, so we may get an unintentional edit or stoppage here before we're done. We'll hope not. Now, plug for another podcast that I participated in, the Epic Levels Mad Dungeons guy. And let's see, Epic Levels Mad Dungeons, yeah. And anyway, they've just posted the one we did. It's an interesting premise. We sit around and spin BS for a while and come up with an idea for a dungeon. So I suggest you check it out. I'll show it to you here. And if you're interested, you can write it down. And I'll probably ask my video guy to stick this up again at the end. So if you don't get it now, you can get it then. So I'll save that for the end. We'll do it again. I'll ask him. All right. Let's see. Ooh, got a game tomorrow. Running a Wheel of Blame. They've had weeks to prepare what they're going to try to give me for stumpers, and I've had weeks of anticipating how I can foil their little desires. So, here we go. All right, for tonight. Can I talk about the Bard class? Who made it, and why was it an option class? Were there any classes that did not make it to AD&D? Doug Swegman, gentleman that played in my group down in Carbondale, one of the early playtesters, though they didn't know it at the time. We called him the Hobbit because he played a Hobbit. Of course, he's about 6'3" and skinny as a rail, and so we, of course, he wanted to be a Hobbit. So, and he happened to be a very good Hobbit. He was very, very fortuitous with his dice rolls, and he did the Bard, and I think he might have had some input on another one. It might have been... Well, Doug had something to do with, I believe, I know the Bard, and I believe he had something to do with the Ranger and the Thief as well. But I'm not sure about that. In any event, I know he did the Bard. Why was it an option? Well, it was an option because you couldn't start it from scratch. You couldn't say, I'm going to be a Bard. First, you had to become a fighter of a certain level. And then you had to become a cleric of a certain level. I know that's the Druids. In any event, you had to have high stats to begin with. You had to prove yourself in a couple of different disciplines. And it was a tough thing to be. And of course, second edition nerfed it, and there's Dan the Bard has a funny song about Bard Camp, where the second edition Bard picked a fight with the first edition Bard and got his ass kicked. But other than that, it calls upon primarily Celtic tradition, but also Middle European, and there's some other. It envisions the aura that they could create with their talents. As to why there were any other classes that didn't make, or were there any other classes to make it to AD&D? I'll bet there probably were. We weren't happy with the proliferation of classes and subclasses, and we felt that we had to address the circumstance, and so the Bard, the Ranger, and some others came out to flesh out the options available. Now, in my opinion, a lot of the other stuff that came later was unnecessary nitpicking. I don't like the barbarian as a class. I don't like a class that goes around destroying magic simply because they hate it and because they're ignorant and don't understand it. That's just one of the many proliferators. I don't know why there has to be 4 different kinds of crusaders. Crusader is a crusader is a crusader. But anyway, okay. Would you be able to talk about the differences between painting miniatures now versus the way it would have been back in the 70s? My understanding is that the enamels were the big paint and acrylic didn't come into prominence till the early 90s or so. Thanks, and thanks for your videos. Yeah, I remember when I very first started painting down at Carbondale, the only thing we had available was the stuff that guys painted, and guys were the ones who mostly did it back then. Painted model cars and stuff, model cars and model airplanes. I can remember how excited I was when the hobby shop over in Murfreesboro, which was a short drive away from Carbondale, got in Homebrew paints. Oh my God, I was in heaven, and spending way too much money on Homebrew paints and used them to great effect. Now, I did a couple of things that weren't, I guess, kosher or normal. I don't remember doing a lot of priming. Though I do remember doing blackwashing to find the lines that I was later going to, accent to paint and whatever. Because with enamels, especially on metal, the metal was clean. You didn't need a primer. It adhered to the metal pretty well. Of course, there weren't any primers used on plastic because it wasn't. Now, later on, I started shooting paint through an air gun. I had a Pache air gun and airbrush, sorry. And, yeah, air gun, bang, bang. I had an airbrush, and I started... and the thing I didn't like about an airbrush, it was very difficult to keep the consistency shooting without clogging up. However, it did enable me to go to a new primer that, when I switched over and started experimenting with acrylics, was a perfect combination, and that was I would shoot gesso through an airbrush. Now you have to thin it way down, and yeah, it plugs up every now and again, and you have to keep thinning it. However, that said, those obstacles overcome, I found gesso to be an outstanding primer, particularly when I started switching over to latexes, acrylics. Gesso allowed you to do a stain as opposed to a brush, opaque coat. Today it's much easier. I use mostly Reaper paints. I use Army paint. I use some Army Painter stains and highlighters and primers. I have a few oddball jars of paint here and there that I acquired one way or another. An odd color that I saw that nobody else had or whatever. Actually, if you have a good color eye, you can go to your local Michael's hobby store, buy 10 or 12 bottles of the basic colors, and mix your own. And if you know what you're doing, those paints are just as good as the others, because anything you're going to paint for the War Games table, you're going to put a coating on anywhere. A matte coat to protect the paint. So it smelled worse back then because we had to use thinners. Nowadays it's water, so a big deal. Other than that, it was rougher on brushes because you had to soak them in thinner or turpentine or whatever when you were done. However, I will say this: one of the best blackwash solutions I ever made, and I used it extensively when I was shooting figures for Adventure Gaming for the miniatures pages we did. Was good old turpentine and black enamel paint, mixed up very, very thin. I had a gallon pickle jar, and I would stir it up vigorously when it was time to use it, let it set for a while, and then I dip figures on a twisted up metal coat hanger, piece of a coat hanger, dip them, flip them over so they drained. Great stuff. Now I don't know if you could do that. I'm certain you can't do it with latex. Okay, here we go about the postage I was complaining about. This gentleman's obviously from the UK and says it's just as bad for you guys trying to buy stuff from here. Well, I imagine it is. I can't understand why this all went to hell in a handbasket like it did. Another person complained that he sends something to Canada, which is a 40-minute drive away, and it takes weeks and weeks and huge dollars. And that's ridiculous. Now, Canada's... okay, Canadian people watching this, you know it's true. Canada's post office has always had an interesting policy of imports. I know. I used to be a magazine distributor. I used to distribute to Canada. I always got the impression that you went to the post office, pushed it through the Canada door, and somebody from Canada would come by sometime in the next 3 weeks and go, oh, a parcel, and then it would get processed. I don't know, I guess Trump and LaJoy, DeJoy rather, ruined it for us with their threats to leave the postal union. Dwarf, history and origins used for the D&D game. How are they in my campaign world? And, of course, the question of female dwarves, beards or not. All right, most of Gary's dwarves were not... The inspiration for Gary's dwarves was not Tolkien. Not the little clanking... More what were called dwarves in European mythology, which were often small, swarthy, little unarmed things who like to play pranks, steal chickens, steal milk, do little mischievous things like that, not necessarily evil. Then there were the dwarves of Germanic myth, who are more dour and solid and oftentimes at loggerheads with humans. And then there became the Tolkien dwarves, which everybody, Gary often lamented that, Tolkien, can't anybody see beyond Tolkien? Because everything became pounded into the Tolkien mode. Is what it is, what it is. Doesn't matter to me anymore. Shouldn't to anybody else. It is what it is. In my world, dwarves are great artificers. They build machines and large things and do really great masonry work. In my world, it's gnomes who do the small, intricate mechanisms and things like that. Yes, everybody knows female dwarves have beards. Now, granted, many of them are so fine and silky they could be missed on first glance. But they're there. Okay, daemon, two different spellings, D-A-I-M-O-N, D-A-E-M-O-N. In Hellenistic Greece was a supernatural entity like a spirit or a minor deity. They were not associated with evil, although sometimes with the fate of mortals. And then there was a reply to that one, once Christianity started, the Christian treated those Greek demons as real, too, but described them as evil, didn't they? Yes, I believe that is the metamorphosis of that concept of demons as opposed to devils. Devils are fallen angels, minions of Satan. Demons were from other places, other planes, if you will. Pardon me. Trying a new energy drink tonight, 180 milligrams of caffeine. We'll see how that works out. Okay, we were talking about favorite comics. This person shared one of mine, The Haunted Tank. Great comic. You know, I got a GI Combat, I think, was the title of one of the Dell comics that had the occasional haunted tank or the other, and Sergeant Easy, or Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, not the Howling Commandos that came later from Marvel, which was a direct lift. But anyway, yeah, that was one of my favorite. Okay, here we go about animal companions from last week. First statement, Mastiff animal companions should get 1 tooth per level of their ranger friend. This will make leveling up so much more attractive. Well, I don't know. On the day that their human friend levels up, do we get to watch him writhing on the ground in pain as another tooth pokes its way through their already crowded jaw? I don't find that attractive. All right. Serious. No reason the render cannot become an exceptional specimen after many ventures of chewing on bugbears. I don't see why he could not have max HP or perhaps a plus to damage and hit after a time in the field. His sniffer would certainly help your ranger friend find that pesky troll warren. As an augment to the ranger's tracking abilities, have your local druid or magic user create a biscuit of animal heroism to give him a boost. Sorry about the 2E ranger, they were totally nerfed. Alright, I'll reiterate. I don't see the necessity for a physical change to the companion. Max hit points, I got no problem with maxing out the hit points. I'd probably had them maxed out from the beginning. I don't see animal companions racing the levels. That's my viewpoint. Mine. Do you need... This brings up a question. This brings up a pet peeve of mine. Why do we need rules for everything? Come on. Do you need a rule for this? As DM, couldn't you just assume that having successfully, made these so many adventures, etc., that the dog has, or what in this case it's a big mastiff, has buffed up, has really good smells, and unless there's been an accident or an encounter where some, gas breathing thing and the dog got a big sniffer and snootful and now it's wonderful nose with 7,000 times more scent receptors than ours, doesn't work so good anymore. That's something to consider. If you're going to buff them up, then you got to be able to take them down and selectively destroy their abilities if that is called for by the encounter. Certainly, I would, if I were DMing in a campaign where a dog had, in this case, his big mastiff had been successful and part of the, the group and suffered the same hardships, etc., etc. Certainly, I would always give it, in my mind, when I'm telling, okay, this is a role you need. I would always give it some extra, for it to take advantage of that extra skill. So if the person's asking, well, I want to try this and such, and for anybody else, I might say, okay, you need a roll of 15 or higher. This big dog makes it 11 or higher. In this instance, whatever that instance is, where the dog's skills and abilities can contribute to the solution. Now, I'm not inclined to make a dog real intelligent. And, I mean, good Lord, Lassie. What? If anybody's never watched Lassie, you ought to watch a handful of them just to see what a wonder dog is. And Lassie always knew when somebody fell down the well. Oh, Timmy's down the well again. Hated the fact that first character, the first kid in the Lassie series was named Timmy. I don't know about a biscuit of animal heroism. That seems like cruelty to animals. We're going to get my hands on some of your self-published material. Don't worry, it's not shipping to the UK. Well, when I refer to self-published material, it's back there in those red boxes with the shiny brass trim. And right now, I'm looking at the possibility of scanning these to PDFs and selling them. Jim Wamper and I have had some recent success with the scanning of some old adventure gamings. We have 5 done. There's 8 more to do. And then maybe after that, because I don't have the scanner of that quality, I don't think. I'm going to have to see if I can get my Canon back up and running. I think that's got the quality for it. But we'll see. Ask me again in a few weeks if I haven't brought you up to speed. Okay, another agreement on UK postage. To the US is often as much or more than the product. Which convention is your favorite to attend? Well, I don't want to choose one as being better than any other. The ones that I regularly attend all have emotional ties to all of them, if you will. Starting with the beginning of the year, Total Confusion Convention out on the East Coast near Boston. They have just treated me so specially. They made me feel so welcome the very first time they had me out there. When I got sick with cancer and that, they sent me a gift that I still have sitting on my desk with my vapes in it. It means that much to me. Angelia has been an angel, and Steve has been great, and everybody else that they've just really made me feel like a part of the whole family out there. And it's a heck of a con. Next we come to Gary Con. Well, of course I have an emotional attachment to Gary Con. It is in commemoration of the memory of my friend Gary, who gave me my first real job out of college. And of course it was much more than just a job. And I made a commitment to the family upon Gary's death that I would attend every Gary Con that I'm physically able of getting to. It also has the cachet of a lot of the old TSRs. Pardon me, all show up for that. So we get to see each other. Now, I gotta say that the majority of the people that show up, I got no idea who they are because they all came after I did. But seemingly most of them know who I was, so that works out. Then there's Texas, the North Texas Role-Playing Game Convention. I was approached one year by this gentleman from Texas named Doug, who said, I'm thinking about putting together a little con down here. Would you please come down and be a guest at it? I'll fly you down. And I said, sure, you bet. And I'd never been to Dallas. And when he picked me up, as he's driving me back from the airport, he told me, don't take this wrong, but I may not invite you back next year simply because I'm trying to get a con rolling and I want to bring in name people to bring people in, and I said, hey, fine, I'm glad to be here this time. Thank you. And of course, I've been to every one, either in person or virtually in the pandemic. Or I didn't go to this last one, because I just wasn't ready to get on an airplane full of idiots and fly to Dallas. So that one has special meaning for me, because my son and his family live in Dallas. So I get to see them for a while I'm there each time. So I've gotten to watch that convention grow. It has a very collegial feel to it. It's not real big. Doug doesn't want it to be real big. But what I've found, more so even than at GaryCon, that some of us old-timers in the industry have a lot more time to sit down with each other and reminisce and just catch up and that, because of the much slower pace of that convention. So I love it for that. It's a very collegial feel. Then we come to TotalCon. Or no, excuse me. We come to Gamehole Con. Gamehole Convention in Madison, Wisconsin. And I just like it because it's an old school game convention, where I go and I run some games. I'm just one of many, quote, names that are, there attending. And I make myself, available. Yeah, I sign stuff whenever I'm asked, and stuff like that. And I've done a few podcasts there. And Alex is just a prince of a guy. He always makes us guests feel welcome and treats us really fine. And the thing I like most about Gamehole is their food trucks. And the food truck I like the most is the one with the giant meatball slider, the Italian meatball slider. What a sandwich. So I got reasons for all of them. I can't pick one. That's like asking me which is my favorite grandchild or my favorite great-grandchild. I can't pick just one. Let's see, what's next here? Okay, I have a magic item of my own for a very low-level magic users to give them a fighting chance in 1E. It's the Night Swan's Wand of Magic Missiles. This item is a 3 charge per day wand of magic missiles that only recharges under the light of the moon. This makes it useful in dungeon settings. It is also made of very brittle wood and saves it -4 against everything, all but ensuring it is destroyed by the time they reach level 4 or so. For the original modules with newer players, I will bestow upon them Rary's Reckless Rewinder, a strange rod-like device of gears and wheels that allows the party to, once per session, turn back time to restart a room or encounter. I found this helped newer players have a chance to learn the game mechanics and enjoy the experience. Just thought I'd share them with you and ask you what are your thoughts of them. Am I too nice? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You're way too nice. I like them. I like the Rary's Rewinder, but I'd only make it work once or twice. Pull your ass out of the jam once or twice, and then I wouldn't have something that could continually overcome bad decisions or negate bad decisions. The wand that's hard to recharge is very brittle in that. I love it. These are the things that I wish every dungeon master could come up with on their own that work that way in their world. The world should be quirky. The only time they're not is if you're going to play in a tournament, and I don't believe they do those anymore. Because, I don't know why. Probably because it'd be a monstrous pain in the ass. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I just wouldn't let them have that many do-overs. People are people. Okay, next topic. I'm the quarter from last week. I think you have the right attitude. I'm with people are people. It doesn't matter how much melanin your body has, how old you are, how you believe in worship, how you identify, what your politics are, etc., etc., etc. You're welcome at our table. Keep fighting the right fight, or rather don't let people drag you in an issue that never existed as far as I know. Yeah, I know, it's another one of these made-up things that people, I'm sitting around bored. Oh, let's start a pissing contest on Facebook. What can I do it about? Ooh, whatever's hot. Okay, I misquoted the guy from Canada. He says, I ship to Canada regularly, and it's like 40 to get it literally 20 miles away. I feel your pain, brother. I have the time machine, referring to that thing that I talked about earlier. I have the time machine. I want to get the original notes for the original D&D, the hand-scratch stuff. Good luck. I saw some of the original notes. And to be fair, once the Three Little Brown Books came out, there was no concerted effort I'm aware of to preserve the original manuscripts. There was no ephemera market back then. So, good luck. If you want to go back and get the original Blackmore, good luck. Took me a week to make sense of it. Took me 3 more weeks to get it out. Well, 2 more weeks to get it out. Okay, on XP for treasure, it becomes a necessity once you hit higher levels of play to progress your character. No, it doesn't. We'll go on. Also, if you read the guidelines for such an award, the experience would be commensurate to the foes who possess the treasure. It's generally a percentage of the GP value of the haul that it was awarded. Okay, now you're going back and using an original D&D concept that taking a pile of 1,000 gold pieces from a couple of orcs who just stumbled onto it, as opposed to taking those 1,000 gold pieces from 10 hobgoblins who fought to the death to defend it. All right. There's a balancing act in there. And it used to be much more prevalent in the original game. And people screamed about it. Didn't like it because it wasn't letting them advance fast enough. Okay. Must be commensurate to the foes who possess it, and is generally a percentage of the... Okay. Finally, the loot has to be spent, converted, secured at a home base, etc. The XP for such loot should be assessed over the time it takes the players to buy equipment, hire professional services, and so on during non-combative play. Your fighter now spends 50k GPs to 50,000 gold pieces to plan, build, and organize a keep, and hire and train soldiers to secure it. He should get an XP award once it is complete, as this is no small task, and will test his mettle as surely as the dragon he slew. No. What, you having your PCs become masons and architects? That, in my opinion, the way it was intended to be, that's an abstract. That's why you have gold piece of... Back in the early days, we had a gold piece for the up tower, a gold piece for a section of curtain wall. What it cost to build, and that was the laborers to build it, the whole 9 yards. I would absolutely never give them more experience for having built the castle. They got a castle, for Christ's sakes. What do they need more experience for? They got 40 hired men at arms. What do they need more experience for? Okay. Guess we know how I feel about that. How do you feel about the concept of making resurrection magic more available by having the cost of receiving that service scale with the level of the character? I've been DMing for over 20 years and have found that when you kill Bob the Wizard, the player usually just comes back with Bob's brother, Rob the Wizard, who's identical in every way, instead of simply having their character die. Yeah, well, I don't do that. I don't allow that. I wouldn't allow that. I never allowed that. Like when I mentioned, your brother around the corner and that's beginning adventures, just starting out, wanting to keep somebody in the game, usually in a con situation or a one-off. Um, I've been imposing other penalties, higher costs for resurrection, lingering injuries, steep medical bills, etc. The entire thought behind this is that death should punish the character, not the player. Nobody likes sitting on the sidelines, rolling up a new character while their buddies are playing the game and having fun. So far, my players have enjoyed this, but just want to hear your thoughts on it. Resurrection should be extremely expensive. As I recall, the rules require level 12 or 15 or whatever, which in the old school was, right, secretary to the Pope. So it should take somebody very high. I don't know about how to level the fees. That doesn't sound very, well, I don't want to use the word Christian. Religious doesn't sound very brotherhoodish to have a sliding scale. Just make it so expensive that poor blokes can't have it done. Tough. Too bad. Sorry. It requires some really expensive physical elements for this spell that alone make it hideously expensive. And maybe you don't want to let the NPC cleric heal them right away because they don't have those things. But for a little additional charge, they can put your dead buddy in stasis so he won't rot anymore until they get the ingredients. If you're going to resurrect them, they should be resurrected no better than when they died. And yeah, I'm a little squishy about whether or not you give them, screw their minds or something like that. Resurrection's supposed to bring you back to where you were just before you died, and I'd make it so impossible to do. So it costs so much. And yes, you could make a sliding scale on the level that's of the player trying to be resurrected. Charge what the market will bear. It should be, death should have effect. If there's no risk, you should give no reward. If there's no risk, why are you doing it? I don't care if you sit down to play a game of checkers. You risk losing. There should be a risk to everything. But that's just my opinion. Which of my esoteric interests do you like throwing in your game? I'm huge into botany and ecology, so my monsters, landscape descriptions, and map making are all influenced by my desire to keep things coherent. I think my players have had to deal with actual plant names and properties more than the average bear. My buddy is big into geology, and his cave dungeon descriptions are fantastic. One of my esoteric interests are words. I used to feel that if I wrote a piece of any substance, any size, and there wasn't at least one or two words in there that 30 to 65% of the readers were going to have to look up, I wasn't doing my job. I love description. I guess it's my not so esoteric interest in writing. I love describing, and I'm big with my hands. And so when they go into a room, I love setting the scene. I love setting the atmosphere, describing what they see. I use my voice. and use vocal tricks, stuff like that. So I guess my esoteric interest is performing as a trained DM seal. I don't mean to diss your question. I think it's only natural that whatever one of your real life interests is going to be, it laps over. I guess mine is really history, because I'll go pull stuff out of history and put it in an encounter, and see who gets what I'm doing. I like the idea of wizard cant. Yes, I do too. I like the idea of secret words that members of esoteric brotherhoods can utter in a seemingly innocent conversation and identify to anybody listening that they're kin, fellow conspirators, fellow members of the guild, of the lodge, loyal order to the beaver, whatever. I like that idea, just as the Masons. And the movie The Man Who Would Be King, Sean Connery and Michael Caine, magnificent, Christopher Plummer, and they use it's not a cant, but it is they are the identifying phrases that the Masons used, or something like the Masons used, whatever. But I like that, because now you can identify each other safely. Okay, another one took up the time travel. I would get a spot in as many games, and especially game testing games, as I could. That foundational gaming experience you guys must have had formed an incredible center of learning for all involved. Experimenting on RPGs with a group of creatives committed to producing the best games they could. What rare air must have created. And I'm not just talking about the gas of gentlefolk gamers here. Okay, there's plenty of that. No, but I'm sorry, that's not the adventure. You can't hang around. You're going back to get something. Can't hang around. We'd know you. There weren't enough of us not to know who you know. Hey, that guy's a stranger. What are you doing here? Get out. Because we might have thought you were there to steal our latest ideas. Okay. And yeah, it was a rare air. The questions that got bounced back and forth upstairs. Hey Tim, give me a name for this. Hey Gary, what do you think? We bounced ideas off each other. We refined stuff off each other. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I'd be a fool to say anything else. Okay, question. How difficult should it be for PCs to ride horses they have never met before, as it were? Should there be some kind of throw roll to see if the horse throws or bucks the rider? Or is it a case of pure DM's discretion? Well, I think whether or not you have a roll is part of that DM's discretion. Now, if the player was clever and in their backstory wrote that they were raised on a farm, or their father was stable master for the Duke, or something like that, then absolutely they could ride. They've been riding since they were young. Absolutely they could ride. Now, if the backstory is that you were raised clerking, hated it, and decided to seek adventure, then no, until you'd ridden a few horses, I wouldn't give you an automatic jump on Trigger's back and hi-ho and off you go. DM, it's up to you to decide. I would look at their agility, I'd look at their wisdom, I'd look at all their stats, and decide whether or not it would happen. I've ridden a horse 3 times. I didn't like it. Don't care for it. The horse knows it. So, if that were the case for a player character, absolutely. Horse throw you off, scrape you off on a low-hanging branch. And don't think horses aren't smart enough to do stuff like that. I had it happen to me, except it was the corner of the barn. And go from there. But it's the second question that I'm going to end on tonight. Half tongue-in-cheek and half seriously. I'd like it for PCs to be able to ride werewolves. How much effort would a PC have to put into this type of thing? This goes on, but we'll go on. Would it require a simple spell to be concocted by a wizard, or would some form of colossal werewolf breeding program be required? I think the questioner might have lost fact of a salient point. Werewolves, wer being the W-E-R-E, werewolves, are humans or humanoids that have been bitten by an animal with this form of lycanthropy. Turns them into a wolf. They act like a wolf. Maybe in human form they have better smelling capabilities or keener sight. No, that's up to the DM. But they're humanoids. So, how would you learn to ride a humanoid? You would have to learn to ride a humanoid under the effects of werewolf lycanthropy. Not. Does your werewolf revert to 4-footed stature? Or is your werewolf more of the traditional snarly head and wicked fangs, but he runs on his back legs? Maybe with a tail hanging out of his trousers. Or maybe no trousers at all. But you see where I'm going here. Now, a program to raise werewolves? I don't think so, unless you're going to go out and steal babies and have them infected. No. Now, if you were talking about wargs, then that's a different story. Big brutish wolves, that's a different story. If you could already ride a horse, you'd have an advantage trying to ride a warg. Now, it'd have to be a warg, a tame warg. Is there such a thing as a tame warg? That's like asking, is there a tame chimera? A tame ogre? Define tame. So, to ask what I think is the general gist of where that question is going, jumping on the back like a two-legged race or a potato race or something of a two-legged beast that's in the throes of lycanthropy, bad idea, and is likely to anger them. The idea of lycanthropy is you lose your human mind. Think Hyde and Jekyll and Hyde. Hyde lost Jekyll's calculating, intelligent mind and became Hyde. More brutish, less sophisticated. If you want to raise wargs, good luck. Have a good retirement program. Have several physicians on hand. And several very highly skilled archers with silver arrows to shoot the ones that get out of control. But hey, it's your world. They rode goats. The dwarves rode goats and pigs in The Lord of the Rings. In the movies, anyway. Don't recall that part in the book, but in the movies, anyway. And no reason they couldn't do that. It depends on the animal and its spine, doesn't it? Let's apply a little logic in this case to a fantasy game. If a creature has a spine that won't snap, if a 150 or 200 pound fighter, armor and all that, sits on its back and, snap its spine, paralyze its legs, and then it's good, Anyway, I digress. Sure, if your world, they want to learn how to ride boulets, go for it. On your world, if some nomadic group's youth have a coming of age, coming into manhood thing where they go out and ride a boulet, find one, ride it, and live to tell the tale. Okay. I imagine you could ride anything that's quadrupedal, or sextupedal, or octupedal. Those are, octupedals. Anyway, I imagine you could ride anything, but you would look extremely silly holding onto a werewolf's all across his shoulders, riding on his back, like Master and Blaster in the Mel Brooks Thunderdome thing. That's just my opinion. Like I said, your mileage may vary. All right. Those of you that might be watching this, it's too late because the game's tomorrow. All the ways I'm going to kill you. No, really. I don't set out to kill anybody. I just merely allow them plenty of opportunity to make mistakes that'll do the same. And so on that cheerful note, I'm going to say, Dodata Govi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when the race went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.